Kathie Lee Gifford. She's a 4-time Emmy-winning TV host, actress, best-selling author, playwright, singer, songwriter, and a whole lot more. I mean, she can do anything. She has a brand new musical film. It's called The Way.
Most people remember Kathie Lee Gifford as the smiling woman who made millions laugh every morning on television. She always looked happy, confident, and full of hope. But behind that famous smile was a life filled with heartbreak, painful secrets, devastating loss, and battles she fought completely out of the public eye. From betrayal and grief to years of unbearable physical pain, her journey has been far more difficult than anyone imagined.
A black place and a black space for 2 years. So we call on my doctor. He brings in my x-ray, says, "You want to see it?" I said, "I don't know, do I?" I said, "That's mine?" He goes, "Healed by the mercy and grace of God."
At 72, how did one of America's happiest TV stars hide so much suffering for so long? And what heartbreaking truth has finally revealed after all these years? Join us as we uncover the heartbreaking truth about Kathie Lee Gifford's life. The little girl who refused to give up. Kathie Lee's story begins far from the bright lights of television, in a small military family that never stayed in one place for long. Her father served in the Navy, and this meant packing up, saying goodbye to friends, and starting over again and again. For a young girl, this kind of life could feel lonely, but it also taught her something important. It taught her how to adapt and how to find comfort even when everything around her kept changing. It was during these uncertain years that young Kathie Lee found something steady to hold on to: her faith. She grew up in a home where Christian values were deeply important, and this became the foundation she would lean on for the rest of her life. While other children her age were only thinking about school and play, Kathie Lee was already dreaming of something bigger. She wanted to sing, to perform, and to make people feel joy through music. But dreams like these rarely come easy. As a teenager, she began chasing small opportunities wherever she could find them, singing at local events, auditioning for anything that might give her a chance. Most of the time, the answer was no. Rejection became a painful, familiar feeling, and there were moments when it seemed like her dream would never come true. She was just one more hopeful young voice in a world full of hopeful young voices, and nobody believed she was destined for anything extraordinary. Still, she refused to quit. Kathie Lee took whatever small singing jobs she could find, performing at local clubs, church events, and low-paying shows that barely paid enough to get by. It was not glamorous, and it was far from the fame she once imagined. But each small stage was a step forward. She was building experience, confidence, and a work ethic that would eventually shape her entire career. Behind the scenes, she often felt unsure of her future. There were nights when she questioned whether success would ever come and whether all the sacrifice was worth it. Money was tight, opportunities were few, and the entertainment world seemed impossible to break into. Yet something inside her kept pushing forward, a quiet belief that she was meant for something more, even when there was no proof of it yet. What nobody around her realized at the time was that these years of struggle were quietly preparing her for a future she could not yet imagine. Every rejection, every small stage, and every uncertain night was shaping the woman who would one day become one of the most recognized faces on American television. She simply needed one chance, one door to open, and everything would change. Just when giving up seemed like the only option left, an unexpected opportunity finally appeared, one small chance that would soon open the door to fame, television, and a completely different life. Becoming America's morning sweetheart. After years of small stages and quiet struggle, Kathie Lee finally found her way into television, and it began in a place many people would not expect: game shows. She appeared as a singer and performer on various programs, slowly building a name for herself in front of the camera. It was not overnight fame, but it was progress. And for someone who had faced so much rejection, even small progress felt like a miracle. As she continued working, producers began to notice something special about her: a warmth, a sense of humor, and a natural way of connecting with audiences. This caught the attention of the right people at the right time, And soon, she was offered a chance that would change everything. The opportunity to co-host a daytime show alongside a charming and already well-known television personality named Regis Philbin. From the very first episode, something magical happened. Kathie Lee and Regis had a chemistry that felt effortless, playful, and completely genuine. Audiences fell in love with their banter, their laughter, and the way they seemed to enjoy every single moment together on screen. It felt less like watching a show and more like sitting in the living room with two old friends who happened to be incredibly funny. Ratings began to climb, slowly at first, then rapidly. What started as a modest local program grew into one of the most successful daytime shows in American television history. Millions of people began tuning in every single morning, not just to hear the news or entertainment updates, but to feel the joy that Kathie Lee and Regis brought into their homes. She had officially become known across the country as one half of America's favorite morning duo. With this success came fame beyond anything she had ever imagined during those difficult early years. She was recognized everywhere she went, offered new opportunities in music, acting, and business, and her name became a household word. To the outside world, it seemed like she had finally arrived at the happiest chapter of her life, filled with laughter, success, and endless opportunity. But fame often comes with a hidden cost. While her career soared to incredible heights, another important part of her life was quietly forming in the background, one that would test her in ways far more personal than anything television could prepare her for. Falling in love with Frank Gifford. As Kathie Lee's career reached new heights, her personal life was about to take an unexpected and beautiful turn. It was during this exciting period that she met former football legend Frank Gifford, a man already well respected across the country for his incredible career in professional sports. Frank was admired not only for his athletic talent, but also for his charm, confidence, and warm personality. Their meeting sparked an immediate connection. Frank was drawn to Kathie Lee's energy, her humor, and her genuine kindness, while she admired his strength, humility, and the quiet wisdom that came from years of experience in the public eye. What began as mutual admiration slowly grew into something deeper, a relationship built on friendship, respect, and eventually, real love. As their bond strengthened, Frank and Kathie Lee decided to take the next step and got married, joining their lives together in front of family, friends, and a country that had grown to love them both individually. Their wedding felt like the beginning of a fairy tale, two accomplished, well-known personalities coming together to build something lasting. Soon after, they began building a family of their own. Kathie Lee and Frank welcomed two children, and together they created a warm, loving home despite their busy, high-profile careers. Balancing fame with family life was not always easy, but they worked hard to give their children a sense of normalcy, love, and stability, even while cameras and public attention constantly surrounded them. To the outside world, their marriage looked like something out of a storybook. Frank was seen as a devoted husband and father, while Kathie Lee continued to shine on television every single morning. Magazines and talk shows often praised them as one of America's most admired celebrity couples, a symbol of what true love and lasting partnership could look like, even in the difficult world of fame and entertainment. Behind closed doors, their relationship seemed just as strong as it appeared publicly. They supported each other through career challenges, enjoyed raising their children together, and appeared completely devoted to one another. For years, it truly seemed like Kathie Lee had found not only professional success, but also the kind of loving family life she had once only dreamed about during her uncertain younger years. But no marriage, no matter how strong it appears, is completely free from challenges. Just when their marriage looked like a perfect fairy tale admired by millions across the country, one shocking phone call arrived without warning, threatening to destroy everything they had carefully built together. The scandal that shocked America. For years, Kathie Lee and Frank Gifford had been seen as one of the happiest couples in America, admired for their love, their family, and the strength of their marriage. But behind the smiles and the public appearances, a painful secret was quietly waiting to be uncovered. one that would soon shake their entire relationship to its very core and shock millions of people who believed they knew this couple so well. The scandal broke suddenly, and it spread faster than anyone could have imagined. News outlets and tabloids across the country began reporting that Frank had been unfaithful, and within days, the story was everywhere, on television screens, in newspapers, and on the lips of strangers who had never even met the couple personally. What had once been a private matter between husband and wife instantly became public entertainment for the entire nation to watch and judge. For Kathie Lee, the pain of betrayal was made even worse by the fact that she could not grieve quietly. Every emotion she felt, the shock, the heartbreak, the humiliation, had to be processed while the whole world watched and waited to see how she would respond. Cameras followed her, reporters asked painful questions, and strangers offered opinions about a situation they knew almost nothing about. It was one of the loneliest experiences a person could imagine, suffering heartbreak in complete public view. Many people expected her marriage to end immediately. Divorce seemed like the obvious next step, and some even encouraged her to walk away and protect her pride. But Kathie Lee made a decision that surprised many people. She chose forgiveness instead of revenge. This was not an easy choice, and it did not happen overnight. It required deep reflection, painful conversations, and an enormous amount of inner strength. Her Christian faith played a powerful role in this decision. She had always believed strongly in the power of forgiveness, mercy, and second chances, and now she was being asked to apply those beliefs to the most painful moment of her personal life. Instead of allowing anger to control her future, she chose to work through the pain privately, while still appearing publicly composed for her career and her children. This decision was not universally understood. Some admired her strength and grace, while others questioned why she would choose to stay after such a public betrayal. But Kathie Lee never seemed concerned with proving herself to outsiders. Her focus remained on her family, her faith, and rebuilding trust in a marriage that had been deeply damaged. Slowly, with time, effort, and painful honesty, Kathie Lee and Frank began working to repair what had been broken. It was not a simple or quick process, but their commitment to their family and their shared history gave them a reason to try. Over time, the public scandal faded from headlines, but the personal impact remained something Kathie Lee carried quietly for years. What most people never realized was that forgiving Frank did not mean the pain simply disappeared. Healing from betrayal is rarely instant, and even as life moved forward, quiet reminders of that painful chapter continued to linger beneath the surface of her otherwise busy public life. But forgiveness alone could not shield her from the string of painful losses and struggles that were already quietly waiting for her in the years ahead. Living through loss while the cameras kept rolling. After surviving the painful scandal that tested her marriage, Kathie Lee returned to her normal routine, smiling brightly every morning in front of millions of viewers. But behind that familiar, cheerful television personality, life continued sending new challenges her way. Challenges that had nothing to do with cameras, ratings, or fame. Privately, she was about to face one difficult season after another, often without the public ever noticing. During this period, Kathie Lee experienced several personal losses within her family and close circle of loved ones. Losing people she cared about deeply forced her to confront grief in a way that felt overwhelming, especially while still being expected to appear joyful and energetic on live television each day. Grief does not pause for work schedules, yet she had no choice but to compose herself and continue performing her job in front of an audience who had no idea what she was carrying inside. At the same time, Kathie Lee also faced growing public criticism throughout her career. Certain business decisions, past statements, and even her clothing manufacturing line became the subject of intense media scrutiny and controversy. What might have been simple mistakes for an average person quickly became national headlines because of her fame. She was forced to defend herself publicly again and again, even during moments when she was already emotionally exhausted from personal struggles happening behind closed doors. The pressure of maintaining her public image became a heavy burden. Television audiences expected consistency, humor, and positivity every single morning, regardless of what she might be experiencing privately. This created an exhausting double life, one where she had to separate her personal pain from her professional responsibilities almost every single day. Few people ever stopped to consider that the woman making them laugh each morning might be silently struggling with grief, stress, or heartbreak, just moments before the cameras turned on. Despite these challenges, Kathie Lee rarely allowed her struggles to affect her performance. She continued hosting, continued entertaining, and continued showing up for her audience, even during some of the most difficult periods of her personal life. Her resilience during this time revealed a strength that went far beyond simple professionalism. It reflected a deep personal discipline shaped by years of hardship dating back to her uncertain younger years. Throughout this difficult stretch, her faith once again became an important source of comfort and strength. She often turned to prayer and reflection as a way of processing pain quietly, without letting it interfere with her public responsibilities. This private strength allowed her to keep moving forward, even when circumstances felt overwhelming and unfair. Yet despite everything she had already endured, nothing could have fully prepared her for the devastating loss that was still ahead. All the pain, criticism, and quiet grief she had experienced up until this point were about to be tested even further by a loss that would change her life completely and forever. Losing the love of her life. In the year 2015, Kathie Lee's life changed forever when Frank Gifford passed away suddenly. After decades of marriage, countless public challenges, and a relationship that had survived scandal, criticism, and personal struggle, she now had to face something far more permanent: the complete absence of the man she had loved for most of her adult life. The news of Frank's death spread quickly, shocking fans across the country who remembered him as a beloved football legend and respected public figure. But for Kathie Lee, this was not simply the loss of a well-known personality. It was the loss of her husband, her partner, and the father of her children. The grief she felt was deeply personal, even as the entire nation mourned alongside her. In the difficult days that followed, Kathie Lee began learning more about Frank's health struggles that he had kept hidden during his final years. It became clear that he had been quietly dealing with serious health issues long before his passing, choosing to protect his family from unnecessary worry rather than burden them with his private pain. Discovering this after his death added another painful layer to her grief, understanding just how much he had silently endured alone. Living without Frank proved to be one of the greatest challenges Kathie Lee had ever faced. After spending so many years building a life together, waking up each morning without him left her feeling an overwhelming sense of loneliness. Even surrounded by family, friends, and colleagues, there were moments when the emptiness felt impossible to escape, a reminder that some forms of loss cannot be filled by anyone else. Despite this devastating grief, Kathie Lee refused to completely withdraw from life. She continued working, continued appearing publicly, and continued finding small ways to honor Frank's memory. Many who worked closely with her during this period noticed her strength, even while recognizing the quiet sadness she carried beneath her composed exterior. Grief did not disappear, but she learned to carry it while still moving forward. Her faith once again became an essential source of comfort during this painful chapter. She often spoke about trusting in something greater than herself, believing that Frank's spirit remained with her even after his physical presence was gone. This belief helped her process her loss in a way that allowed her to continue encouraging others, even while privately mourning one of the most significant losses of her entire life. Over time, Kathie Lee began to realize something important. Remaining in the same environment filled with constant memories and reminders of her old life might be preventing her from truly healing. The home she had shared with Frank, the career she had built for decades, and the busy city life she had known for so long all began to feel heavier with grief rather than comfort. This quiet realization slowly planted a seed in her mind, one that would eventually lead her toward a difficult, life-changing decision. Staying where she was might offer familiarity, but it would not offer healing, and Kathie Lee knew deep inside that something needed to change if she ever hoped to move forward. Eventually, she understood that remaining in her old life would only deepen her pain, pushing her toward a difficult decision that would soon change everything. Walking away from everything she knew. After losing Frank and quietly carrying her grief for months, Kathie Lee began to realize that something inside her needed to change. The busy city life she had known for decades, filled with television schedules, constant public attention, and daily reminders of the years she had shared with Frank, no longer felt like comfort. Instead, it felt like a heavy weight she carried every single day. Slowly, she began considering a decision that many people found surprising: leaving the Today Show after so many successful years. For a long time, this program had been part of her identity, something millions of people associated directly with her name. Walking away from something so familiar felt frightening, but deep inside, she understood that staying might prevent her from truly healing and moving forward with her life. When she finally announced her departure, many fans and colleagues were shocked. Some believed she was simply retiring after a long and successful career, ready to relax and enjoy a quieter lifestyle. But the truth was far more complicated than most people realized. Kathie Lee was not retiring from life. She was searching for something deeper. A fresh start that would allow her to heal from years of grief, pressure, and public scrutiny. She made the bold decision to leave New York City entirely and move to Tennessee, choosing a slower, more peaceful environment far away from the busy streets and constant spotlight she had known for so long. This transition was not simply about changing location. It represented a complete shift in how she wanted to live the next chapter of her life, prioritizing peace, reflection, and personal fulfillment over fame and constant public attention. In Tennessee, Kathie Lee began exploring creative passions that had often taken a back seat during her demanding television career. She devoted more time to writing, allowing herself to express emotions and experiences she had carried privately for years. Music also became an important outlet, giving her a way to process grief and rediscover joy through something she had always loved since childhood. Filmmaking became another unexpected passion during this new chapter of her life. Rather than simply appearing in front of cameras as a television personality, she began exploring storytelling from a completely different perspective, learning, creating, and investing herself in projects that felt personally meaningful rather than driven purely by fame or ratings. This period of her life proved that success and fulfillment do not always look the same. While many assumed she was quietly fading from public life, Kathie Lee was actually rebuilding herself from the inside out, discovering purpose beyond television, and finding healing through creativity, faith, and quiet reflection. For the first time in years, she finally felt like she was living life on her own terms. Just when things finally seemed to be settling into a peaceful rhythm, another unexpected challenge was quietly waiting for her, one that would test her strength once again in ways she never anticipated. The health battle nobody knew about. While many believed Kathie Lee's life had finally settled into peaceful retirement, a new and painful challenge was quietly developing behind the scenes, one that had nothing to do with grief or public scandal, but instead involved her own physical health. Over time, she began experiencing severe pain that gradually became harder and harder to ignore. It started subtly at first, small aches and discomfort that she assumed were simply part of getting older. But as time passed, the pain intensified, eventually affecting her ability to move, work, and enjoy daily activities she once took for granted. Simple tasks that used to feel effortless slowly became painful challenges, forcing her to confront a difficult and unfamiliar reality. Eventually, doctors determined that she needed hip replacement surgery, a major procedure that required significant recovery time and physical therapy. This was only the beginning of a long and difficult health journey. In addition to her hip surgery, she also suffered broken bones. injuries that further limited her mobility and independence, and added new layers of physical and emotional pain to an already exhausting situation. As if that were not enough, Kathie Lee also underwent cataract surgery, dealing with vision problems on top of everything else her body was already struggling to overcome. Each new health issue added additional stress, frustration, and fear, making her wonder how much more her body could realistically endure during this already challenging chapter of her life. Perhaps one of the most difficult parts of this experience was the emotional toll of losing her independence. For a woman who had spent decades working, traveling, and living an active, energetic lifestyle, suddenly relying on others for basic daily tasks felt deeply humbling and, at times, incredibly discouraging. It forced her to reconsider her identity outside of fame, television, and constant productivity. Eventually, Kathie Lee made the courageous decision to speak publicly about her struggles, admitting that the pain had become so overwhelming that she had, at certain points, questioned whether she could continue living that way. This admission surprised many fans who had always seen her as cheerful, resilient, and unshakable. For the first time, the public saw a much more vulnerable, honest side of the woman they thought they already knew. Despite everything she endured, Kathie Lee refused to give up hope. She continued fighting through recovery, therapy, and setbacks, determined to reclaim as much independence and joy as possible. Her motivation came largely from her desire to remain present and active for her children and grandchildren, refusing to let physical pain completely define the remaining chapters of her life. Looking back at everything she had survived, from childhood rejection to public scandal, from devastating loss to physical suffering, it became clear that every painful experience had somehow prepared her for this difficult moment, teaching her a resilience she never knew she possessed. The heartbreaking truth about Kathie Lee Gifford. Returning now to where this story began, Kathie Lee's recent admission about unbearable pain reveals something far deeper than a simple health struggle. It reveals decades of hidden heartbreak carried quietly behind one of television's most recognizable smiles. The woman millions watched laugh every single morning was silently enduring more pain than most people could ever imagine. From her earliest years, Kathie Lee faced constant uncertainty, moving from place to place as part of a military family, searching desperately for stability and purpose. She endured years of rejection while chasing her dream of becoming an entertainer, refusing to give up even when success seemed impossible. That same determination eventually led her to television, where she became one half of America's most beloved morning duo. Yet even as her career soared, her personal life brought both incredible love and devastating pain. Her marriage to Frank Gifford represented everything she had ever hoped for, but it was tested by public scandal, betrayal, and heartbreak that unfolded in front of the entire nation. Instead of choosing anger or revenge, she chose forgiveness, relying heavily on her faith to guide her through one of the most painful chapters of her life. As the years continued, Kathie Lee faced additional personal losses, career controversies, and constant public criticism, all while maintaining a cheerful, energetic presence for millions of viewers every single morning. Few people realized just how much she was quietly carrying behind the scenes, proving that public happiness does not always reflect private reality. Then came the most devastating loss of all, Frank's sudden death, which left her facing loneliness and grief unlike anything she had previously experienced. Rather than remaining trapped by sorrow, she made the courageous decision to leave everything familiar behind, moving to Tennessee in search of healing, creativity, and a new sense of purpose through writing, music, and filmmaking. Just when life finally seemed peaceful again, her body began fighting battles of its own. Chronic pain, surgeries, broken bones, and the painful loss of independence she once took for granted. Despite everything, she refused to give up hope, choosing instead to keep fighting for the sake of her children and grandchildren. Looking back across her entire journey, it becomes clear that behind one of television's happiest and most familiar faces was a woman who survived rejection, scandal, heartbreak, devastating loss, loneliness, and painful physical suffering, all while continuing to bring joy into millions of homes around the country. Perhaps the true story of Kathie Lee Gifford is not simply about fame or television success, but about resilience, faith, and quiet strength, carried through some of life's darkest moments. Does knowing her full story change the way you see Kathie Lee Gifford? Would you have found the same strength to keep smiling through such heartbreak? If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.